Nick Timothy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was slightly baffled by the Minister's answer just now, saying that it's not the government's job, so it's not ministers' jobs to vet witness statements when they're made on behalf of the government. This is exactly the point. They are accountable. The Prime Minister said that the evidence that was relevant to the case was the last government's China policy, but the statements published last night showed that they were changed to reflect this government's China policy. This is not the only way in which the Prime Minister's story has fallen apart, but on this specific point, what the Prime Minister told the House wasn't correct, was it?
It was. There was no political interference from this government under any of those statements that were made. There was not, and it doesn't matter how many times the honourable members allege it, that is the case.
Richard Tice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amongst all the noise of this China spies scandal, my constituents in Boston and Skegness, and I think the whole British people, want some clarity from this government. Does the government view China as a national security threat? Yes or no?
The evidence throughout sets out the threats China poses multiple times. There is complete consistency between the two. Obviously, there are very serious threats. I read them out in my statements. Yes.
Dr. Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Deputy National Security...
May I say thank you very much, and I apologise for earlier outbursts, but may I just place on the...
Sorry. I'm not in the position I need any advice or any help. I've enough from this side, I don't want it starting over here as well. I think, in fairness, we will take it there was an apology to the front bench at that time. Tom Tugendale.
May I start, Mr. Speaker, by saying very briefly quite how this feels. My home has been broken into, my files have been ransacked, somebody has been put in my office by a hostile state, and two parties are playing politics with it. This is national security of the United Kingdom. The elected people of Tunbridge chose me. They may have chosen wrong, but they did. The elected people of other parts of the United Kingdom chose everybody else in this House. It is up to them to choose who represents them. And yet here we have two individuals seeking to extract information from us. And the government's response is not, as mine was, do everything you can to make sure the prosecution works, but no, process. Well, who the hell's side are you on? This isn't about the bureaucracy, this is about leadership. We're not sent here to be civil servants, we're sent here to lead the country and to make decisions. And instead, and I feel nothing but fondness for the Minister in his place, and I'm very sorry that he's been sent out on his, not quite first outing, but pretty close. It is on his first outing to defend the indefensible. Because what he's got the position of doing now is to effectively say that he's not a politician, he's a bureaucrat, there's nothing he can do, and frankly, he shouldn't even be here in the first place. Because that seems to be the Prime Minister's line. Former Attorneys General have got up and they have prosecuted on the state's behalf. This Attorney General and this Prime Minister have said, not on my watch, not worth the effort.
Can I thank you for that? And just say I have huge respect for him, even if that evidently isn't mutual at the moment. But let's see if we can get to that place. Look, the Prime Minister answered the question yesterday. I do fully appreciate how personally this affects him and how personally affects his constituency and indeed his office as well. I do understand that. I'm genuinely not trying to play politics in this. I'm genuinely trying to tell. I see his eyes raised at that, but I'm genuinely not. And I'm genuinely trying to tell the story of this, of how this has progressed, and to reiterate from the dispatch box the point the Prime Minister made yesterday and the Security Minister made on Monday, that the government's position under successive governments, but the government's position, particularly under this Prime Minister, is there will be no interference with the CPS in the process of this, and that every effort was made to try and deliver evidence in the way to support their case when it was asked for.
What evidence can the government provide to us that every sinew was strained and that the government did everything it could do to find that evidence? And if that evidence is in fact available and others could find it, won't the government have some explaining to do?
Thank you. Can I thank him for the question and the tone of it. On the first point about on the same question of. Can you just remind me? I'm so sorry, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the first question is about why the Deputy National Security Advisor included in his statement reference to economic opportunity when he knew that wasn't the question he was being asked or the relevant question.
So sorry, and thank you for that. The point I was going to make is on that. is that that is to provide broader context of the position of the government at the time in relation to its position on China, but it is an independent decision. It is a decision taken freely without interference from ministers or advisers for the DSNA to do that. I can't. That's not my position to account for. That's his decision, and that was the evidence submitted under consecutive governments on that. So that's all I can add to that, I'm afraid.
Given that the Deputy National Security Advisor is a civil servant and therefore accountable, who was holding him to account for the job that he was doing? May I just emphasise that I'm sure he was doing his level and honourable best in the circumstances in which he found himself, but it is really beyond belief that as it became apparent from the third inquiry, where the Director of Public Prosecutions was asking for a clear statement that China was a national security threat, that nobody was capable of telling him, well, actually, you better say that. You better say that. And the idea that he was somehow beyond any influence from anybody is laughable. One can only conclude that this conspiracy of omission was something the government wanted because they didn't want this trial to go ahead.
No, that's really not the case. That's not the case. Firstly, on the DSNA, who, as people who've worked with will know, is of the highest calibre and integrity on this matter. He presented evidence under successive governments on this and devoid of any influence, as I say, from advisers or government on this side. I cannot say if that's the case on the other side, but I'm sure that is the case. But he presented that evidence freely, and he presented that case to the best of his ability under successive governments.
Richard Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I should declare an interest, as I am named in the witness statements, and as someone sanctioned by China, I was shocked to learn that the Prime Minister knew that this case was about to collapse several days beforehand, but chose to do nothing. We now know that the CPS were not far short of what they needed. The DPP told MPs yesterday they were something like 5% short. But we don't know exactly what the CPS were asking for, what that 5% was. And we don't know why the government would not go that bit further when it was asked to. And that is what we need to hear from the Minister today. Why didn't the government give the CPS what it was asking for? Nobody is disputing that there's plenty of evidence. The witness statements are shocking. They tell us that China is conducting, quote, large-scale espionage operations. Cash is said to have told Berry in a message, "You're in spy territory now." Yesterday, government sources briefed The Guardian that, and I quote, civil service decided that decisions should be done independently of ministers. No, Mr. Speaker. The civil service does not get to decide anything. Ministers decide. The Prime Minister was not some helpless captive, unable to make sure that the CPS had what it needed. He knew and he decided not to help. Why? Let's come back to the evidence that was provided. The PM said yesterday that he was utterly constrained by the position of the previous government, and every expert had already contradicted the PM on this. But we can now see that the two witness statements from this year did state the position of the current Labour government, a direct contradiction of what the Prime Minister said yesterday. And the evidence includes lines from Labour's manifesto. They weaken the case. It makes it less clear that China is a threat to our national security. That's one of the things that changed. And the Sunday Times reported on a meeting convened by Jonathan Powell with the Permanent Under-Secretary of the Foreign Office to discuss this case. And until yesterday, the government said that was just made up. But now they admit it happened, but they still won't come clean about what happened in that meeting or any other meeting. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, this House needs to know what was asked for by the CPS, why it was refused, and we must see all the correspondence and the minutes. If they won't publish the China files, people will ask, what has this government got to hide?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, the Minister, for that. And as I say, I do recognise how personally important this is to him and to many members of the House on this. In terms of transparency, as I say, the Security Minister has given two statements in this House. The Prime Minister gave, which I think we can all agree was a rather lengthy statement as well yesterday, and he has taken the pretty unusual process of publishing the evidence in full yesterday. So transparency is something the government is trying on this. The key point the Shadow Minister made was around why the Prime Minister or ministers didn't interfere or try and as the Prime Minister made clear yesterday, this was a matter for the CPS independently, and an important principle of this government, and Evidence was provided independently by the Deputy National Security Advisor. The Prime Minister made clear. So this is a bit I find confusing, Mr. Speaker. This is a bit...
Just a moment, Mr. Cartledge. You're very energetic from there. Even I can hear you here. So please, a little bit less.
Mr. Speaker, this is a bit I find slightly confusing about the opposition's approach, because on Monday, and periodically in that statement as well, they accused this government of political interference in this, including from the National Security Advisor. The Prime Minister has made absolutely clear that is completely untrue. On the other hand, they're also saying there should have been there should have been political interference, and that the Prime Minister should have directed or tried to help the CPSs. The Prime Minister made it very, very clear that is not the case, and that is not, and that the Prime Minister would not, and no government would interfere with the CPS, which was a decision entirely for them to charge. In terms of the evidence in the three statements put forward yesterday, there is clear consistency across them. They all set out very, very serious threats that China pose. I don't think anyone can think that isn't the case. And I think they are all it's provided independently by the Deputy National Security Advisor without interference from anyone else. They are his words, that is his choice of what happens, and that is what's happened on there. And Mr. Speaker, we've been through this several times on Monday, on yesterday and today. I'm sure the Prime Minister has provided the evidence on this. The evidence is there for ministers' members to see. Ultimately, the decision was taken by the CPS not to proceed. We are all disappointed in that, and thank you.